Hi again. Welcome back to another edition of Loose Wheels, the auto racing podcast of CentralMaine.com. My name is Travis Barrett. I am the auto racing writer at the Kennebec Journal and the Morning Sentinel. Once again, another jam-packed podcast as we talk about auto racing in Maine and beyond. We've got a good one today, I think. We've got Cassius Clark, who finished second in the Pass 150 at Oxford Plains Speedway on Sunday, on the short list of favorites probably for this year's Oxford 250, which is shaping up, judging by what we saw on Sunday, to be a really good one. We've also got Ken Minott. He's the promoter and track announcer and longtime fixture over at Wiscasset Speedway. I think two really good conversations you're not going to want to miss. But before we get to those guys, just quickly, what a weekend. What a weekend. I know Beech Ridge ran into some rain that kind of dampened their 70th anniversary celebration, which is too bad. They had a lot of neat stuff planned there. But, you know, Cody Tribbett at Wiscasset won his first career Pro Stock feature event. And over at Oxford Plains Speedway, Tracy Gordon on Saturday night, a champion at Oxford in the early 1990s, who later went on to a ton of success in the Old Bush North Series and is running past now. Tracy won the 50-lapper over there. That was his second win at Oxford in a month. If you remember, he won the Pass Open 100 back on July 1st. So Tracy had a really good month of July. The one race, of course, he's never won. He said last year that one of the reasons he's back racing is because he wants to win the Oxford 250. And as one of the best drivers ever to come out of that track, along with names like Mike Rowe and Jeff Taylor, I think people would be thrilled to see Tracy Gordon win an Oxford 250 before it's all over. But listen, I can talk forever. I don't want to do that. We've got a ton of good stuff. And we're going to start right off with Ken Minott. I've known Ken for a long time. He's a huge asset to the Maine motorsports community. He probably would not take that much credit for it, but Ken, I think Oxford and I think Beech Ridge tend to get a lot of attention in Maine. Oxford's kind of obvious with the Oxford 250 and the names that have raced there. Beech Ridge is really kind of in that center of that population area down in southern Maine. There have been a lot of great racers that have come out of there. But Ken Minott has kept track of the history of Wiscasset Speedway, and he really believes in that track and its history and some of the people there that have made it a really important place on Maine's racing stage. And it was great to catch up with him. A lot of good stuff as we talk about some of the changes that have happened over the years at Wiscasset, really in the last decade with Richard and Vanessa Jordan taking ownership. So without further ado, here's Ken Minott of Wiscasset Speedway. So we have with us this week, we have Ken Minott, who is the longtime track announcer and also the promoter at Wiscasset Speedway. Ken, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Travis. Good to be with you.
I know you've been looking forward to this for probably really since the first episode dropped.
Yeah, it's a bucket list thing I can finally check off, and I can call my mom and tell her I finally made the big time. So
well, good.
But no, all kidding aside, I really want Travis, and we're kind of filling a niche with the local racing scene that's greatly needed. So thank you.
Well, I try. I do what I can with limited resources and brain power, I assure you. So tell me about. I feel like if we go back a few years, let's go back 3 years. I think was the first time I came back and covered a Coastal 200. And I tell you this story because I have a sneaky suspicion you've heard this a lot, but I walked in and I thought, this is not the same place I had been at, 6 or 7 years earlier. From your perspective, when you look at all the changes at the racetrack over the last, I don't know, pick 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, what jumps out at you the most about what's different at Wiscasset Speedway now?
I think you kind of touched on it, Travis. It's a different. It's a changing of the culture, really. I've been at the track for a long, long time, and it was a different way 20 years ago. I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable bringing my kid to a racetrack on a Saturday night. Yeah. But thanks to the leadership of the Jordans and a different approach that we've taken, and kind of a little shorter time on the show, an earlier starting time, and it's bringing that family atmosphere to the track, and you can see over the past 3 or 4 years that parents are more comfortable bringing their kids
Yeah.
I was just a week ago that I look around and Penny sees 100 kids a night plus at her kids club table, and when the kids help me drive or start your engines, more and more kids are doing that. It's just nice to look up in the stands and see families up there instead of just mom and dad, or mom looking down and dad the only one really into the racing.
Yeah. Well, I think too that, as we know, we've all kind of been beating this drum here in this sport for the last few years, is that if you don't get if we don't get the next generation involved, and I think it's a perfect example of you guys are getting the kids involved, and I think I don't think we're going to notice it this week or next season, but I think down the road it's going to make the sport healthier in Maine, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so too. It's not just the kids in the stands. I think it's nurturing those kids through the ranks of the go-kart tracks, like Richmond or Bartlett Bridge or wherever the kids are racing go-karts. We're trying to get a go-kart program ourselves off the ground, but it's helping those kids have that next stepping stone into racing as well. The pros that we run or Thunder 4 minis. But not just nurturing those kids in the stands to become fans of the sport, but to get those kids involved in racing themselves.
Yeah. Do you remember when you found out that the Jordans were going to buy the track? Do you remember what your reaction was?
At first, I was happily retired. And,
right.
A lot of people remember I left the track at the end of the 2008 season, and I was kind of content. I was out of it and moving on with spending some family time. And I did the same Wiscasset that the drivers had put together. And then when the Jordans bought it, I thought, well, that's great. I think these guys will do good with it. They had that one welcome race at the end of 2012 that they ran, that one singular race that year. And I thought, okay, I'll help them with this. And I spent a weekend with them with that race and got to talk to them a little bit more and get to know them. And and this is kind of all how it came together. I thought, man, these are really nice people. I think they've got a good future with this place. And I sent, about a couple of weeks after the race was done, I sent Richard and Vanessa an email that just said, best of luck with the track. And as someone that's been here at Wiscasset this long and had a history here, here's some recommendations that I have for you that might make things easier for you in the long run. And I just kind of let it go, and then a month later, I get a phone call from Vanessa, and it said, Richard and I have read your email almost every day since we've got it, and we'd like to sit down and talk with you about, getting you involved in the track again, or at least talking about your thoughts a little more.
Yeah.
And I gathered with them and spent 4 hours with them one night talking at a restaurant, and I was really happy. I hadn't made up my mind yet to come back. I was really happy with what I was hearing from them and what they planned to do with the place.
Yeah. It's fascinating. There were so many quote-unquote risks that they took, or at least way that they looked at things outside of the box. I think the two most notable ones are the $5 admission. Doesn't matter what the show is, essentially. It's $5 to get in for adults. And I think the other thing was the two groups, where essentially you've got a full race program every week that alternates week after week. Half your divisions race, half your divisions have. And I remember thinking at the time, because nobody else was doing that, not in Maine anyway, that it was like, yeah, but are they going to drop off? Because once you give them a weekend off, and I think if anything, and I definitely want you to talk about this, if anything, it's had the reverse effect where it's kept all 8 of those divisions healthy.
Yeah, well, first on the $5 admission, that was a risk because basic economics tells you twice as many people through the gate to make the revenue needed to run the place.
Sure.
But we followed that old adage with MTC. So I'd rather have 1,000 people in there at $5 a piece than 500 people at $10 a piece.
Yeah, or 200.
There's a perception issue there. If somebody's coming to the track for the first time and they come in and the stands are empty, they may not know why. They may have this perception that, wow, there aren't very many people here. This may not be worth it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if they come in and it's their first time there and they see the stands full and full of families, then they might say, hey, wow, there must be something to this place. This, maybe, I made the right decision by being here. So there's that whole deal. And I know people, there's the kind of antagonists on the outside who sometimes say, well, yeah, the reason that they have full grandstands is because they charge $5. Well, that can get them in the first time, but you have to provide them with the quality entertainment to justify no matter what you pay.
Sure.
So I feel that $5 gets them in, but what we give them for entertainment, what the drivers give them for entertainment, and our staff and how they make the fans feel welcome, that is what gets them to keep coming back.
Yeah.
And I kind of think of it more as value rather than a cheap ticket.
I know for me, there's nothing worse than if I go to a minor league baseball game and you go on a night when there's not many people there. Granted, part of that's my schedule, right? Weeknights, Tuesday night, and, May when the weather might not be great, but it's your one chance to go. But anyway, point being, if I go to an event and there's not many people or I don't feel like I'm part of something, it's not that enjoyable, So I would much rather be in a place where, like you said, I'd rather have 1,000 people than have 300 people, no matter what it costs to get in, right? I want to feel like I'm part of something.
Yeah.
So.
And then on the end of things with the schedules, I think that was probably the biggest risk of all that we took in coming up with this alternating schedule, because I think the biggest fear of promoters is, hey, I have a driver locked into my track. There's no way I can let them leave, because if they leave, they may never come back.
Sure.
Well, we took a big risk by offering them the opportunity. Use that off week for either spending time with your family or racing. We don't have a problem saying, go ahead and race at another track.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you come back, but you're a racer. Go challenge yourself at another track.
Sure.
And then other drivers sometimes will sit in the stands as a fan with their families. Sometimes they'll work on the pit crew of another friend of theirs that races on an alternate night. So, those are some opportunities that they have instead of getting nailed down to a 20 to 25 week schedule. So I think the biggest benefit that has given us on car count is consistency.
Yeah.
If you race every week and you get a guy with a low-budget team who blows a motor or gets a bent clip or something, it may be 2 or 3 weeks to come back. Yeah. Now you've got an opportunity to get 2 weeks to get your car back on the track.
Sure.
Instead of scrambling to try to get it all done in 1 week.
I know.
So as a kind of a backsided benefit, our car counts have remained much, much more consistent week to week. Race to race, that is, with 2 weeks between.
I know in talking to Mike Hodgkins, who, of course, all but destroyed his car in that Super Street feature at the end of June, if he had not had an extra week to get ready, he wouldn't have been back the next week. He would not physically have been able to be back, not physically with his health, but the race car would not have been even close to being back on the track. And then there's a guy who was trying to win his first championship at Wiscasset, and that entire opportunity would have been lost, or not for an alternating schedule where you have an extra week for a true weekly racer to be able to get all of his stuff put back together and afford to do it. I think it's
exactly, and it gives them a full season, but it gives them that off time. Sometimes, like I said, having an off week to do something with the family, camping, or you might have a wedding or something, or family reunion.
Sure.
You can schedule those things in and not lose your opportunity to race for a championship.
Yeah.
So I think that presents them a lot of opportunities as well.
I don't know if you guys have heard complaints about, geez, I would love to race every week. I know from my end of it, I haven't had anybody ever say to me in your pit area, I really wish we raced every week. In fact, I've had a number of guys say it's so nice. And of course, we know we get to know some of these guys. They have families. They have small children. They want to spend time with their families. So I haven't heard anybody say, "Oh, it kind of stinks we don't race every week." And I think the guys who really want to race every week, go find another division. Nick Reno's there every week, isn't he?
Exactly. Another division or another track or what have you. Some guys will race a tour race or something on their off week.
Yeah.
But back when we first introduced this, people just inherently, as humans, hate the uncertainty of change.
Oh, do they ever?
So they're always resistant to that change when it's first introduced to them. So when we first brought it up, we met a lot of resistance. Now, 5 years later, we couldn't dream of taking it away.
Yeah, true, true. Well, I think, again, there were two. We talked about the mission, we talked about the schedule. Those are two things that were completely out of the box that have definitely worked out, and it's good. And I know for me, it's just.
I think it gives our fans a nice variety too.
Sure,
that's another thing I was going to mention.
Sure.
You know, the days are gone of having an 8-division race night where you're there for.
Yeah. Amen. Thank God.
A little variety,
right.
But not have them there all night. So.
Right. No, I think it's great. So I want to ask you about, because I know, God, we can talk forever, you and I, but
yes.
As you know, one of my favorite races of the entire year, the Oxford 250 will always be the crown jewel in Maine for a lot of reasons, but I had somebody say to me the other day when I was at Oxford, ironically, that, boy, Travis, you have really beat the drum of that Coastal 200 and turned it into a race that matters. And I said, well, I don't know that I had anything to do with that, but I really love the Coastal 200.
It helps.
Well, maybe, but I really love that race because for reasons that I've talked about on here. I love the idea of a race geared towards your weekly racers. That is a really it's a great challenge. So, and I know that you love the Coastal 200, and I know that you really pushed years ago. I mean, we're going back a ways now. I think we're going back to the previous ownership to get that race back on the schedule. And so I want to ask you about that, but I also want to kind of couple it with, the Boss Hog 150 now is going to be on a Sunday afternoon of Labor Day weekend. It kind of, in some ways, mirrors the Coastal 200, which is Memorial Day weekend on that Sunday. Is it important for Wiscasset to have these marquee events in today's racing culture? That's what I want to ask you.
I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's for any track to have at least one marquee event that is theirs.
Yeah.
Regardless of what track it is, whether it's Unity with the Long John or, Oxford with the 250, things like that. So I think it's important for every track to have their own marquee event. And when the Jordans bought Wiscasset and we were talking about, okay, aside from a basic schedule, what are we going to do? The first thing I brought up is we have to bring back the Coastal 200. It originally had started as a 150-lap pro stock race, but then over time in the late 2000s it was changed over to a late model race. That's where I think that particular race found its niche, found its mark.
Agreed.
And I know you've talked about how that makes it's the marquee race for late model drivers. There's no doubt in anyone's mind what the marquee race for pro stock drivers is.
Sure.
So we're like, why don't we put our efforts into making this the marquee event for late model racers? So the Coastal 200 was first on our mind when the track was reopened. And then Rich has always been a big proponent of pro stocks. Who isn't? If you're going to have Maine's fastest track, put the fastest weekly full-body car.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress, but we're working on rebuilding our pro stocks and trying to get them the respect that they deserve. And as you and I know, that's a work in progress.
Yes.
But I think the Boss Hog race is one thing that can help bring it back to prominence the way it should.
Sure.
Dave St. Clair, Boss Hog, is the one that started that race. Richard and Vanessa and myself have always had great respect and admiration for Dave. And this is a good tribute to him and all he's done for Wiscasset. So Rich was the big one to push to bring this pro stock race back and as the boss hog.
Yeah. Well, did you? Because this will be the first time that it's kind of held as a standalone on a Sunday afternoon. Do you? Maybe what was the thought process behind that? I personally I'm not trying to walk into anything. I'll just let you know. I like it because I always feel like anytime you have those quote-unquote special races that are just part of your Saturday night program, I think it's easy for them to get lost in the shuffle. So I wonder how much discussion did you guys have to have about moving it to a Sunday afternoon, or was it really no discussion at all? It just made sense.
Well, with the Boston, while the Coastal has kind of had its set spot at being Memorial Day weekend, we've bounced the date for the Boss Hog around a little bit, trying to find where it's going to work best. We obviously want to make it a race that it showcases our regular Saturday night pro stock guys, but they have wanted to have the opportunity for outside competitors to come in too.
Yeah.
So we decided to take a swing at running it on a Sunday, and hopefully on a time when it will make it able for other outside guys to come in to race it. So we're running it Labor Day weekend, obviously a week after the 250. We know Oxford usually takes a week off then, so hey, here's an opportunity maybe for some teams that didn't get into the 250, or maybe some teams that came out of the 250 a little stronger than they expected and have some tire money and want to run another big race the following week. So we're already seeing some good returns on the idea of moving it to Labor Day weekend. We've got Dave Farrington's registered for it, Travis Benjamin. He always supports it, but it was nice to see Curtis Berry just registered to run the Boss Hog 150 as well. So we're starting to see some returns on the idea of running it then. We ran the Granite State Pro Stocks a couple of years ago that ran really, really well on a Sunday afternoon. So we're going to try to make this one stick and see how it comes out.
Yeah, I certainly hope it works for you. Look at us. We've already gone like 19 minutes, which is more than I told you it would be. But two things I want to mention really quick before I let you go. You have a 50-lap late model race as your Spotlight division on Saturday. It's a Group 2 night. It's only $5 to get in. I think we already covered that. And also you have Summerfest. The Maine Vintage Race Car Association, their annual event for the first time at your track on Sunday. You have a busy weekend ahead of you, Ken.
Yeah, actually a busy weekend and a busy couple of months. I'd probably recommend anybody to take a minute and go to our website, wiscassetspeedway.com. You get the full schedule on there. But, Group 2 this weekend. Our late models have a 50-lap main event. And you've heard me rave about our late model class. With the car count, anywhere from 18 to 24 cars a night, and the level of competition and the respect that these guys race with, I will gladly put our late model class up against some of the top divisions around northern New England.
Yeah.
These guys really, really put on a great show, and they'll have center stage with a spotlight race this Saturday. And then right afterwards, we're going to start setting up for Summerfest. We're really happy that the Maine Vintage Race Car Association has kind of made us the stewards of Summerfest. It's been traditionally run down at Beach Ridge. They wanted to move it to another track, just to try to attract some folks from more into the mid-coast and central Maine area,
sure,
to give them a chance that they might not have otherwise had to see this celebration of Maine racing history. So that happens from 10 to 4 on Sunday. Vintage race cars, the Wicked Good vintage cars are going to be running the hobby class is going to be running a little race, and might have a little pro stock grudge match race if we can pull some guys together, some barbecue, and just a lot of fun, kicking around some memories of great vintage racing, and a lot of good Hall of Famers will be in attendance as well. So going to be a great weekend, and in less than 2 weeks, we've got another history-making night with super modifieds running at Wiscasset Speedway for the first time ever. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. So we've got a lot of neat things coming up.
Well, it's that time of year. I feel like once summer gets going and then we get to the 4th of July, I feel like the race schedule always seems to find a way to ramp up in the second half of the season. So get some rest at some point. You're going to need it. But hey,
yes, sir.
But hey, I really appreciate it.
I really love it.
I know you do.
You know me, Travis. We've known each other for many, many years.
Yeah, that makes us old.
You know how much I love Wiscasset and the work I put into it, and it's all worth it. I like being the promoter job that I've taken on. It just kind of gives me, I like putting that big puzzle together and seeing the reaction of the fans when it's all done.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a great job. You don't need me to tell you. Maybe you do. But you're doing a great job, so keep it up. Thank you for taking a few minutes to do this. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you over there this weekend, and best of luck the rest of the year.
Absolutely. Thanks, Travis.
Thanks again to Ken for joining Loose Wheels. Again, my name is Travis Barrett. I'm the auto racing writer at the Kennebec Journal and the Morning Sentinel. Make sure you visit centralmaine.com/sports for all your auto racing coverage throughout the year. Also, share the podcast, whether it's through posts or you can download it right on iTunes. We'd love to have you along. Our audience keeps growing. The audience keeps growing. And that's a testament to you guys, the listeners, for sharing it. And I would encourage you to keep doing it. We've gotten great response, and I'm happy to keep doing it. Gives me an excuse to talk to people, which, of course, is actually my job. But, I like it anyway. I like to do it. So Central Maine Sports is on Facebook. We're also on Twitter at Central ME Sports. And you can get me on Twitter at TBarrettGWC. All right, on this week's TB's Press Box, Kurt Gary, if you haven't heard, is making history. He won again at Oxford on Sunday afternoon. He won the Pass 150. He took the lead from Cassius Clark with 21 laps to go on a restart. Won his fifth consecutive pass race at Oxford Plains Speedway. As best we can tell, looking through the history books, nobody has ever won 5 straight races as a track before. Keep in mind that until Kurt Gary won the Oxford 250 last August, he had never won a touring race of any kind in his career. It's a remarkable story. He's understated. He's soft-spoken. It's something to be celebrated, and it's out of nowhere. With no disrespect to Kurt, and I think he'd be the first to tell you, I think the word he used to describe it the other day in Victory Lane was unbelievable. But it's absolutely remarkable what he's done and the way he kind of came out of nowhere, and now they can't beat him at Oxford. I thought Cassius had a really good chance to do it the other day. In fact, Greg Emerson, who was on last week's podcast, you might remember, he sent me a text right before the Pass 150 started and said, $5, I'll take Kurt Gary. And I said, do I get the field? And he said, yes. And I said, I'll take that bet, because I thought at some point the streak had to end, and it didn't. And I think one of the really remarkable things about Sunday afternoon at Oxford was that your top 3 was Kurt Gary, Cassius Clark, and Reed Lanfer. And I think, as we talked about in the past, talked about it last week, that last race of the year before the Oxford 250, that last pass race at Oxford, is always a really good indicator of what's to come. I wrote about it in my column last week. And we have, our winner was the defending Oxford 250 champion. Our second-place driver was Cassius Clark, who started on the pole last year and has finished in the top 6 in 6 straight Oxford 250s. And Reed Lanfer, who now has finished second twice in his young career in the Oxford 250, including last year. I think we saw some things. I think if you had to pick a short list, those are the guys. And if I was going to add one more name, I would probably add Travis Benjamin, who looked really pedestrian in qualifying on Sunday. Had to take a provisional to make the race, but drove from 31st into the top 5. And he looked really good during that race on that high groove. So amazing weekend at Oxford. And certainly it leads right into our next guest. Cassius Clark has everybody convinced that he used his stuff up too much early in the race and allowed guys to stick around, wore his tires out, allowed Curtis to pass him late in that race. Cassius still, days later, maintains that he never pushed his car that hard, that it was really good. He thinks he's got his best chance ever to win an Oxford 250 coming up this month. So we're going to hear Cassius talk about it, because I felt like I would be doing a disservice if the first question I didn't ask Cassius was about, all the talk on social media and immediately after the race in person was that maybe he had driven too hard early and not saved enough. And he's adamant that he ran a really good race, and just some stuff went wrong on the car at the end. So I think you should hear from Cassius. It's a really good story. Cassius started out racing with his dad, racing for Ed Chapman out of Auburn, and now he's kind of teamed up with Rollie McDonald and King Racing out of Canada. He runs a lot of big races. He runs a lot of 250-lap races every year. We talked to him about that, and certainly about his crew chief, Andrew Hicken, who has that 13 car going as well as anybody. But it's really nice to see Cassius in a place where he's kind of the hired gun, and not just that, but he's the guy that, everywhere they go, people watch that 13 car. It's been good everywhere. It's always good. It's always fast. And I have no doubt that when he returns to Oxford at the end of the month, like I said, he's going to be on the really short list of favorites. So here's Cassius Clark on this week's Loose Wheels. We have Cassius Clark with us on the phone. If only you could hear what we've talked about before we even started. But Cassius, thank you for agreeing to take a few minutes to do this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. Long time no see, and anytime for you.
Well, man, you make me feel important. I appreciate that. So I want to ask you the first question that I feel like I've seen it everywhere on social media, and I saw it, almost immediately after the race ended on Sunday when Kurt won the Pass 150 over there at Oxford after you led 120 something laps. Did you save it? Did you feel like during that race like you had saved enough stuff, or were you kind of surprised? Were you surprised at the end that he was able to get you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We were up front. We had nobody to race the whole race, so we were riding around. We were Andrew had race monitor, and we were keeping track of obviously. What's his name? 7G. So we were keeping track of his lap times the whole time, and we were trying to mimic his, even though we were in the front. But see, we were never in traffic, so it kind of looked like we were really going fast, but we were still running the same lap times. But then we were trying to stay within 1 or 2 tenths. And honestly, I've never driven a race so easily in my life. He yelled at me one time for not having I was riding around with my hand out the window. You know what I mean? So 60, 70 laps in, it was literally going around that quarter throttle the whole time. So, then we just got to the end. Obviously he's got a good car and everything, and we just, there was a couple restarts before. I would try, I'd have a restart, and I would go hard for 3 laps, and then I would start backing up again, and we did that. And he got by Reed, and then he could never gain on us, and it was 30, 40 laps to go. Mm-hmm. And if it would have gone green, he never would have caught us, but they kept having a bunch of yellows, and then he got by me on one restart. We made a little bit of contact there, and then after that, I picked up a vibration on the right front there. It just, I could stay with him, but I wasn't as good as what I had seen earlier in the race. But like I said, we kind of mimicked lap times throughout the whole race. We kept track of what he was doing, and tried to do that so that way if we did have a late race caution, then we'd be all set. But he was just like I said, he was just a little bit better. We found some issues after the race when Andrew took the shop and checked it out. And he's won the last 5, and I think I finished second to him my last 3 or 4 over there. He's won, I finished second. So we're getting closer. The first time he whacked us bad. He got to me lap 140 and drove away so far that I couldn't even see him at 4 laps. This time he was trying to get hard. He was bouncing off the curb. He was off the track. He made all kinds of mistakes. And if my car was an 8 tight, if I was a 5, then it would have been, a wicked finish. But it was a little bit off. And we know why, so we'll keep working on it and come back in August.
I asked Reed after that race. Of course, he finished 3rd. I asked him if the 7 cars performance here in these last 5 races at Oxford dating back to the 250 last year, if that had started to change the way people were racing. And Reed kind of laughed, and he said absolutely has changed it. I think you're always worried about where the 7 car is now at Oxford, and he didn't ever remember paying such close attention to another car at a particular track at any point. But you're a little bit older than Reed is, not much, but a little bit older. Do you remember? Has there ever been a time when you've seen another car at a racetrack that you had to pay such close attention to in terms of your race strategy, or is what Kurt is doing really kind of uncharted territory for teams?
He races at Beechridge and Oxford.
Sure.
He doesn't go anywhere else.
Yep,
so,
sure.
He's got a setup that's working for him, and more power to him. But back in the day, it was, back in like 2001, yeah, we'd go to like 10 different racetracks, and Benji would be like, win 9 races, or Johnny, or me, I won 6 and finished second 4 times. 10 different racetracks. So, it's never different. Like, Bubba Pollard comes up and races the 250, they're going to ask where he is all the way through the race, or whoever, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. I mean, he's the guy that's won the last 5, so yeah, everybody out there is keeping tabs where he's at, but it's not like he's, nobody's ever done this before. Maybe nobody's won 5 of their Oxford races,
right?
But like I said, there's a lot of races at Oxford now, and he's got a good car. Like, look at Travis Barrett, he was good there for a couple of years, and won the 250s and won a couple of the shows and did that. But see, like, we're tour drivers, so we go around and tour a bunch of different places, and you learn different things, and sometimes you get a little bit lost where he's kind of complacent, just races those. So he's got his setup that's working, and why change it? But when you go to different tracks, it's a little different because something that works at Oxford is not going to work at White Mountain,
right?
Stuff like that.
Right.
So, which is always kind of been an advantage over the years for the Oxford 250 guys, for the local guys there, just because they race here every week, they get the same things. Their only disadvantage is that they don't run the long races, and then they don't, they don't go through the same process that some of the tour guys do, because they race that distance weekly or, a lot. So the maintenance on their car and, the driver, adapting to running that many races. So it's different that way. But I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Curtis. What he's done is remarkable. He's the guy to beat for sure, and we're all, working hard for Oxford to be able to keep up with him. So, like I said, I was happy that he whacked us the first one. We're getting closer. We found a couple of issues where we feel like we're right there with him. So we'll keep working on it. Andrew's been working on that thing 24 hours a day since we got that, dissecting it, trying to make it better. So.
Right. Well, you got to let him sleep at some point, Cassius. Otherwise, he needs to rest if he wants to work on that car and make it ready. So make sure you get him some rest. 24 hours a day is too much.
Oh. Yeah, well, he works 24/7. If he's not working on it with his hands, he's working on it with his mind. So I've got the best crew chief in the business, bar none. I've got no question about that. He works his, he works his tail off. Whether he's, like I said, he's doing research and all that. So I couldn't have a better guy on my side.
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask you about, and I'm looking at kind of the numbers here. So 2005, 2006, 2007, those 3 seasons, you won 10 races in pass. And I wonder, and I'm pretty sure that was driving for whether it was the car that Ed owned or whether it was you guys in your own car with your dad. But I wondered, what I really want to ask you about is, did you ever think then that you'd be in a position you are now where you get to drive for Rollie McDonald and, you're in such a good spot right now. Like, your car is always competitive. I feel like every race you go to, you're one of the favorites. And I wonder if 10 years ago you ever would have imagined this would be where your career would be at.
Yeah, well, I've just been really fortunate. I mean, like, when I started racing, on a wing and a prayer anyways, like, actually Ed Boy started racing. I've been on a racetrack with my dad. I've been wanting to race since I was, like, 6 years old.
Yeah.
And never got to it. My dad finally bought me a go-kart for Christmas one time, and I blew it up. We never got to race it. Like I said, Ed Boy started racing. He was, like, 14 or 15, and I was 16, and I was like, we got this jet ski, let's sell this damn thing, and I'll go race, so that's what we did, and did that for a couple of years, and had a lot of success, like, had a lot of people who me out, like, bought us engines, and,
sure.
And took me to Las Vegas, and took me to Charlotte, took me to Florida, and, got all that experience, and then, just told my dad, we raced it for 3 years, won a lot of the races. I think we won 7 out of 9 at Beach Ridge one year for Thursday Thunder, and I said, well, it's time to try to do something different and put the car for sale, and Ed got wind about it, and he said, well, let's do something. So he ended up buying a pass car there and raced for him for a number of years, and was fortunate to do that. And but it was cool because it was, Ed spent the money, but it was still my dad and I working on the car, like what we did with the Legends. Like, we didn't rely on anybody. We kind of went out and did it on our own, and learned everything that we needed to do. And then, like I said, we won a bunch of races with Ed, and then Ed kind of got sick of it, and I was out of it. Like, I was like, shit. I got my business going there, and I didn't have anything much. I was racing for a guy down south once in a while. I moved back up here and bought the business. I didn't have any plans to race. I mean, obviously I wanted to. And then I started running for Dickie Woodman, which he had just started a team up, and we had a couple of good races there. And then I started driving for Heights.
Yeah.
And while I was doing that, I knew Andrew from down south. So Rolly got hurt, and obviously he's got great equipment. And Andrew told Rolly, to get Cassius to come up and drive this thing. So even when I was driving for Heights, I was kind of throwing races in for him when I could. So. I did that, and I think Andrew's really brought that program to the front. I mean, he's such a perfectionist that, Rolly lets really nice stuff, and he allows, Andrew to do what he needs to do on the cars, and they really brought a good lease business. So it's been a pleasure to race for him, because, I mean, I don't know, we've probably raced 6 or 7 times this year, and, I mean, I can't even hardly remember a time that we were probably worse than 3rd or 4th in any practice. And I think, we won a race, got thrown out, won the first Oxford race, got second at, the first Oxford Pass race, got second this weekend, got 3rd up at Spud, and in the other race we crashed out. A wheel was left off the car, and we crashed on lap 1, but we had the fastest car all weekend. So, I mean, the thing's just a rocket ship. It's an old car. It was built by Stevie Levitt back in 2012, and they got a Fury clip on it, and it's a car that I've been racing for them since probably like 2014, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is 2014. It's amazing. So, if you, I feel like we had this conversation last year about one of the things that you kind of get with this team is you run a lot of 200s and 250s, and of course, having grown up in Maine and your dad. Being who he is, the Oxford 250 has always meant a lot to you. And I just, maybe, again, I know we've talked about it, but I would ask you again, sort of, what's the value, how would you describe kind of the value of running so many 250 lap races over the years? Because I don't, we talked about weekly guys who go from a 50 lapper every week to a 150 lapper and the challenges they face. But I think there's still a huge gap when you go from 150 to 250, and now you're talking about changing tires and the way everything is constantly fluid in terms of track conditions and everything. Is there any way to describe kind of the value of being able to run so many of those kind of races over the past few years? That was a long-winded question.
That's kind of what we do with. That's kind of what we do. I mean, I think I've won 7 250s now for Rolly since 2012. So I mean that's a fair amount of them. We're just kind of prepared to do that. Like I said, we've got a team that's been together since I started. We kind of built it up, picked up a few guys here and there, but it's all the same core guys. And pit stops and strategy and all that takes a big play of it. And then obviously like maintenance on the car. There's like so many different variables. Like last year's 250, I mean it was. Oxford 250 was crazy, The Oxford 250 is a little bit different just because it pays lap money. So if you're up front, I mean, it's going to pit again. You go as fast as you can and get your $100 a lap. We got $15,000 out of it or whatever, 12, 13 grand, and led a bunch of laps and pit at the same time Curtis did. He was in front of us and came out ahead of him. But there were so many cars still on the track. Running 3-4 wide, that he got in a better lane and drove to the front, and then I was trying to come back up through and got spun out with 50 to go. So then we said, we're going to start the back anyway, so we put our 2 right side tires on. It just didn't quite have enough time to get, back to the front. So it's, you can try to plan, what you want to do. Say, okay, we want to go to lap 175, pit at lap 175. Well, if there's no yellow at lap 175, or if a caution comes out at lap 150, depending on what people do, it just makes a total change in the race. Where just a regular 150 lap race, you know what you got to do. You got to get you get to lap 150 and you got to win the race. But you never know, if people are going to pit after you or pit before you. And every 250 since it's been the 250 again for the pro stocks, it seems like I've always been there in contention for the win every year. I think we finished in the top 5 or 6 or whatever.
Yeah, top 6
every year.
The top 6 every year.
Been back since, but it was just, it's just the strategy is just which we had the right strategy that we felt. We pitted late one year, and they never had yellow. One year we short pitted, had the lead, a straightaway lead with 20 to go, and the yellow came out. Mm-hmm. So just kind of had the unfortunate luck that way. But yeah, you just have to you got to go with make a plan what you kind of want to do, and then just be able to adapt to what's happening during the race.
Yeah. Is it still the most important 250 to you? Is it still the most important race left for you to win, given the way your career is going here?
Yeah, it's my goal, and obviously just because it's here, it's a huge race. But there's so many guys from Farmington that should have won it anyway.
Sure.
Like Tracy and Jeff and my dad, and like they've been like dominant. Like if you go to Oxford, they were like the dominant cars. Like you would think that they would probably have 250 wins between just those three guys.
It's true. It's so true.
Just bad luck has never happened. So, obviously I don't want to win it for myself, my dad, but like for those guys too, just because, they probably don't even like me, but still, you're still from Farmington, you know what I mean? So, it would be cool for the community because, there's been so many great guys. There's a lot of guys other than that too, but those are the ones that I can think off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, I still remember. Man, we're going way back now. You and I were both much younger. I probably had hair in those days, but I remember you were talking about even when you were young, like you wanted to win it for Franklin County. Like there's part of you that's always wanted to win that race and as competitive as you are, not just for yourself, which I think says a lot. So in these last 5 years, when I look at top six every year, was there one year that you thought you had the best chance to win it out of that group?
Last year we had a really really good car, and we had a few issues. Like the first year that I drove for Andrew there, we had a spring collapse. Like we drove from like dead last to second or fourth or something in like 70 laps. And rode there and pitted, and on the pit stop we had a cheaper spring in the car and collapsed. And that was the next week we went to the beach. We're at 300 and basically could have lapped the field and pitted and the fuel.
Oh, I remember that.
The fuel deal fell out and they made us pit with like 50 to go. So we learned from that. Put that good spring in there. The car was like a rocket ship. So there's been some years, and even the years for height, had a big lead with like 20, 30 to go, and a lot of times 20, 30 to go, you don't see a yellow at Oxford. You know what I mean? It kind of runs through, and I had a straightaway lead, and then with the guys that all had pitted for tires like 30, 40 laps behind me, and then there's a yellow out, so I was a pit duck. So and we had a good car. I had to pit early just because we had the wrong tire stagger, so we pitted early, so we didn't go down a lap, and you try to maintain it. And there's been a lot of times that I've had a good car, easily capable of winning it, but I honestly think this is going to be my best year. We've been it's been hard with Rolly just because we run so many different setups. Like we have to run the circus cars up there. They got like the different shocks and tires and motors and stuff like that, spools, which is totally different than what we run down here with the good shocks and a little different motor and rear ends and stuff like that. And so we don't get to do that all that much. So we're kind of always switching back and forth, which is why we want to come down here this year to run the Oxford race, just to get a good notebook on these tires and try to get that figured out.
Yeah.
And I feel like the first race we were good. Obviously led probably 140 laps. Got beat by Curtis at the end, and then this time here, I know we got beat again, but we were a lot closer to him than when we were the first race. And like I said, he's already dissected the car. We found some issues where we feel like we can go faster. So really looking forward to getting back to the track and applying that to our setup and kind of going from there.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be back here before we know it. So let me ask you this: aside from the 250, what else do you have on your schedule with that team this year?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm a guy that just races. I don't bring money to the table, so I get to race when I win money in the race. So The one up in Canada hurt a little bit because it was 16, 18 grand and would have set us up for some more races.
Yep.
But yeah, if we win, last year we went to Oxford and won, 17 grand. And the next week we went to Canada, won that race and won 18.5. And then the next week after that, we went to another race in Penny there and won another 17, 18 grand. So we got to go to the snowball again, which that's a huge expense. That's,
Sure.
40, 50 grand to go run that race. So hoping to do that again, have another good 3 runs in the race there, at Oxford, Speedway 660, possibly the Petty one, depending how everything works out with that.
Yep.
And then we might go to Richmond as well.
Well, there you go. See, it sounds like a pretty full schedule already. It fills up fast.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what I live for. I mean, these are all the big races. I mean, it's fun to, every race is awesome, but, I really, really enjoy the bigger races. You get the crews involved, there's different strategies, and it's just a lot more fun when you get so many different variables and all that. So really looking forward to, I think we've got, that's all we're going to run for the rest of the year is 250s or 300s or, whatever, all big races. So,
yeah.
This is the prime time of the season to go out and try to win some money.
I'd say so. Listen, on that note, I'm going to wish you luck for the rest of the year, and thank you for taking way more of your time than I meant to take. So I appreciate you coming on and doing this.
I appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
You too. We'll talk to you soon. And that, thanks to Cassius for joining us. Thanks also to Ken Minott from Wiscasset Speedway from joining us before. That's going to put a bow on this edition of Loose Wheels. Don't forget, centralmaine.com/sports. We've got a lot of race coverage coming at you this month as we cover the local tracks, and we also get geared up for the Oxford 250 at the end of the month. We're on Facebook, Central Maine Sports. We're on Twitter at Central ME Sports. I'm your host, Travis Barrett. Find me on Twitter at TBarrettGWC. If we didn't see you last weekend at the racetrack, hopefully we'll run into you somewhere this weekend. Get out and enjoy local racing. It's as good as it's ever going to get right now in Maine. It's competitive. A lot of cars, 51 cars for that past race the other day at Oxford. That's outstanding. So we want to see some more of that, and I'm sure we will at the end of the month. Thanks again for listening to Loose Wheels, everybody. We'll see you next time.